So let's talk about broken pieces. This was a weird one. I'm not sure. Well, maybe I'll figure out how I feel about it as I talk. So the opening scene was very intense with the admonition and the vision that caused all the Zhat Vash ladies, most of the Zhat Vash ladies to... Excuse me. I shut the door, the dogs went in. Just 1 second. You want on the bed? You can jump up there. There's Molly. Sorry about that. Anyway, the Zhat Vash ladies, they drove them mad. One shot herself, one bashed in her head with a rock, one gouged at her face. It was all very, very, very intense. And the one that seemed not unaffected, but least affected was Rizzo. Is her real name Narissa? Or is Rizzo her name undercover in Starfleet? Remember how she's undercover in Starfleet? Because I'm not sure the show does, but that's neither here nor there. Turns out Rhonda, the XB Romulan that Hugh introduced Soji to several episodes back, is Narek and Rizzo's aunt, or at least they call her their aunt. She raised them apparently after they were orphaned. And here's a little, I hate to keep harping on this, but if Rhonda was on this cube and Narek and Rizzo were on the cube, why have there's been no interaction before? Why is this just coming out now? I don't see any purpose in it having been a secret that where this needs to be a revelation in this episode. Remember when I was complaining about how Rizzo had nothing to do but talk to Narek and have the same creepy conversation over and over again? She could have been talking to Rhonda. Also, if this was an attempt to give Rizzo some nuance, maybe even get a little bit of sympathy for her, at least for me, it failed miserably. I don't know that I'm ever really going to be into Rizzo. Also, I hope this is just Rizzo talking out of her backside and not something the show is really trying to say, that the being assimilated and Rhonda's mental stress over the admonition visions where all synthetic life wiped out this unnamed civilization millennia ago. Her despair caused this cube to malfunction, to become separated from the Borg, to cause the assimilation to fail. I hope that's just Rizzo riffing, because otherwise, well, quite frankly, that's stupid. I'm pretty sure assimilation doesn't fail if the subject, the victim, is in enough despair. Okay, so that did not work. This episode felt kind of like 3 episodes in one. You got the Borg Cube, which is an action-y type of thing. You got the La Serena and Santiago's backstory. I'll talk about that a little bit here in a minute. And Rafi Investigated is kind of like a fun, mystery that's kind of quirky and has some humor. And then you have this character piece between Picard and Soji and Jurati in there too. And I enjoyed all 3 of these things, though I had some quibbles with them. I'm not sure how well they mesh together. The other dog wants in now. Excuse me. Well, come in. Here you go. My little shadows. Anyway, I'm not sure how well these three storylines kind of mesh together, although they came together a little bit more at the end, at least the ones on the La Serena, where everyone got together to talk and reveal what they know and do a lot of exposition. But I don't have much to say about Agnes. She comes out of her coma to Picard. Picard immediately says that she's going to go and turn herself in as soon as they get a chance to go to Deep Space 12. I'd have preferred another station, but... And that feels like a return to form for Picard. That feels very Picard-ish, Picard-like, Picard-esque. And I don't know if you go so far as to say, show compassion to Girardi, but he's not. He clearly condemns what she's done. He's not really condemning her. He's not railing at her or anything like that. I like that. Anyway, we get Santiago Cabrera. Did I say call him Santiago before? Rios. I'm confusing actor and character. Rios. We get Rios's backstory. And again, I'm a little torn on this because we knew from when we first met him that he had this tragic backstory with a captain who died violently. So that's okay, and I'm glad to see that explored. And the actor Santiago Cabrera, this was a great acting showpiece for him for a few reasons, but especially in Rios's backstory. The acting has been top notch. The details of this backstory bother me a little bit. I like his clear affection for his captain, Vandermeer. I like the tie back into Marta, what's her name? That Picard, who was a friend of Picard's way back, as we saw in Tapestry. I like how he was Raffi and Rios after that weird thing where Rios was suspicious of Raffi last episode. I like that their friendship clearly is very strong here. But the details, the ship, the Ibn Majid, I feel like I cannot be pronouncing that correctly. But anyway, Vandermeer's ship where Rios was stationed met two synths. One who looked exactly like Soji and Daj. This was, I think they said 9 years ago. And another, a male, they use the he pronoun, called Beautiful Flower, who maybe, they don't say this at any point. My first thought is he maybe looks like Data. Maybe we're going to get Brett Spiner back. Anyway, and Commodore O gave Captain Vandermeer orders to kill them both, or the ship would be destroyed. And so Vandermeer did. Rios confronted him. Vandermeer committed suicide right in front of Rios. Rios freaked out, and then he covered everything up, so as he said, it wouldn't be for nothing. And then he left Starfleet. He was court-martialed, or probably not court-martialed because they want this to be hush-hush, or encouraged to leave. I didn't get the sense that he left voluntarily. Anyway, so that all... I understand the need to tie Rios's past into the main plot with the Sims. I do. It feels a little small universe to me. A little too coincidental. So it didn't really work, but the acting really saved it. I think Discovery has this problem more so, but I think Picard has shown a little bit of it too, that relies on its cast, which is generally excellent, to do a little too much of the work when it comes to the writing, the plotting, to sell things to the audience that don't really make sense if you look at them too closely. Now, all shows do this to an extent, I think, but I feel like this might be becoming more of an issue, or at least it was an issue here. Like I said, I think Discovery has a bigger problem with this, but I don't want to harp on this too much because I don't think it's a huge problem, but it is something that I've thought about. Okay, I want to talk about the holograms, but first, there's a note. When Picard and Soji beam up from Nepenthe first, and Raffi is immediately suspicious, and she tells him about Agnes, Picard is still dismissive of her, and I don't know if this is going somewhere or if the show doesn't realize it's really doing this, but that bothered me. Or maybe it's just because I like Raffi a whole lot, because that really annoyed me. How he still doesn't seem to fully respect her. Well, I think he respects her abilities, but he doesn't really want to hear from her if she's not saying what he wants to hear. Unlike with Riker and Troy, who he is able to listen to. Okay. Now, holograms. This is, again, a huge showcase for Santiago Cabrera. As an actor, he played Rios having his breakdown, and he played all 5 holograms. It's really cool, the scene in Picard's holographic chateau study where apparently Raffi could walk into any time. Maybe I shouldn't complain too much if Picard is a little salty with her. It reminded me of Orphan Black. Those scenes when Orphan Black is, spoilers for Orphan Black if you haven't seen it, it's about clones. And Tatiana Maslany played several characters, like more than 5, many. And there would be scenes where they would have not a whole lot of scenes. Usually scenes with the clones would be 2 of them or 3, but sometimes they would do scenes where they would have all the main clones. Sarah and Allison and Cosima and Helena. One was a dance party, and I saw a behind-the-scenes video of how they shot that. It took a long time. It was quite logistically difficult, and this must have been similar, very logistically difficult to shoot with Cabrera playing all 5 actors, all 5 holograms. Let's see if I could count them off. Ian, the Scottish engineer. The EMH, does he have a name? He's the Irish one, right? Or is that Enoch, the navigator? Then there's the pilot Emmett, who seems to speak only Spanish, and it seems to always be coming off a bender. And then there's the hospitality. I've lost count. Sorry. Molly, you're okay. She wants out. Anyway, that scene in the study was mostly thinking about how much work that had to be logistically to pull off. They must have been that must have taken maybe days to shoot. So, thumbs up for that. And it was funny, but I feel like I'm being harsh on this episode. But I don't think it was quite as funny as it was meant to be, or as the show wanted it to be. I don't know. I admire it technically. I admire the acting. I don't know if it really worked within the story. The story is that they all know something about Rios and this synth Jana and his backstory, what happened. And Rafi is trying to figure this out. She's been going to them individually, and now she's gathered them all together in a drawing room or something. But the mystery isn't revealed. They know something they can't articulate. Because Rios used the self-scan option accidentally to make all the holograms look like himself. I think that's less an accident and more a symptom of... Just one second. Molly, you are not convenient, babe. There you go. Anyway. Nothing really gets revealed in this scene. I think it's just an excuse to show off for the show. To show off Santiago's skill. Those are good reasons. I don't know that it really was necessary for the plot, but it was fun and it worked, and it's okay. What else? Okay. Anyway. I feel... Sorry, this notebook has broken pieces. Here we go. Okay, so switching over to the board cube storyline. Again, there are some quibbles. I am not sure, I missed it or they didn't explain it, how Elnor got a hold of that panic button thing that Seven gave Picard. I guess Picard must have left it before he and Soji used that Borg transporter to leave the cube. Either I missed that or it wasn't highlighted. I'm not sure. Anyway, Elnor has that. He's hiding from the Romulans, and he uses it. He calls Seven. Seven makes this huge, dramatic, cool entrance in the middle of a fight. He helps defeat all the people, the Romulan soldiers attacking Elnor. And I like, one of the first things she says is, "Where's Hugh?" So I like that Hugh and Seven know each other, because that doesn't feel small universe. That makes sense to me that they're in the same area of space. They're both ex-Borg. It makes sense that their paths would overlap. But it also highlights a really missed opportunity to see those two characters interact on screen. Another reason why I think Hugh's death, as it was depicted, was kind of a waste or a misfire on the show's part. And again, I don't know that Elnor is really the problem. I like Elnor well enough, but Seven only really, after she fights all these people, she only ever interacts with Elnor. They go to the Queen cell and she starts messing with the holographic controls to disable the Borg cube, and then she plugs herself into the mini collective, the collective of the cube, not the whole collective, but just of the Borg that are still in stasis on the cube. And Jerry Ryan does a great job. She does everything she can to sell the gravity of this, of why Seven would be reluctant, why she might feel she has no choice but to do this. But it feels weirdly like an afterthought. I mean, Jerry Ryan, as I said, is doing her best to sell it, but it feels kind of like a throwaway. Seven plugs herself into the I'll call it the collective, I'm referring to the cube, And there's that great moment where her eyes go black and she says, "We are Borg." And it feels very dramatic and very, but I don't think it has the weight that it should. The cube is active. The Borg drones are all jettisoned into space. So that's another problem. It feels like it was going to be a big battle between the Romulans and the Borg, with Seven as their queen, essentially directing them. But then they're like immediately spaced. Although Borg can survive in space, can't they? Did I make that up? I guess we'll have to see. I could swear, First Contact, they had Borg fighting in space, and Worf shot one that to be like this, and the Borg weren't wearing helmets, so they were. I guess we'll have to see. Anyway, so maybe that's not over, but it felt, despite Seven selling it, and I certainly don't want to see her assimilated again, but it felt weirdly throwaway, despite that good acting. Jeri Ryan is great, and she's doing everything she can to sell it. I think the problem is that she's acting opposite Elnor. And again, this is not a slam on the actor, whose name, Evan something, sorry, or the character, who is likable enough. But they don't really have any. I mean, that hug when Seven first shows up was cute, and I could buy that Elnor would do that, who doesn't hide his or stifle his emotions, would be relieved to see her and hug her. But these two don't know each other. We barely know Elnor. So it doesn't feel like it has the weight it should, but okay. We'll deal with that. Then we get the Soji Picard, and this was the best part of the episode, their interactions, where they're just sitting in the mess hall kind of talking. And it really was the best. Soji says, "Tell me about Data." So she's opening herself up a little bit more to learn. She's moved past denial, and she's probably still angry. She wants to learn, trying to learn more about herself. And Picard is lovely talking about Data, how he's able to admit, which I don't think he would have been able to back in the TNG days, that he loved Data. And Soji says, "He loved you too." And I buy it. I never really bought that Data had no emotions, even before that ship, which I always thought was a little bit silly. But it seemed to me clear that Data always had emotions. They may not be exactly like human emotions, but Data's not human. He's an android. He experiences emotions like an android does, however that is. Anyway, those scenes were the best. That scene between Soji and Picard, and the scene between Picard and Agnes, where she tells him about what O did to her, forcing the mind meld and showing her a vision. Let's talk about that vision for a second. I'm not one of those who will go through something frame by frame to figure out everything, but clearly it looked apocalyptic. Agnes described it as hell. I think I saw Arium. I definitely saw Data. I saw worlds being destroyed. So clearly I could see how this affected her very badly. And something that struck me, she said, "Oh, put in a psychic block, so she couldn't tell anybody about what she saw." Which I guess explains why in the last episode, she kept encouraging Rios and Raffi La Serena to go home, to forget about all this mess and just bug out instead of trying to say anything directly. So that explains that. But it doesn't seem like she was compelled to kill Maddox, in the sense that she was brainwashed, that she had no choice. That's something she chose to do and then couldn't live with it. So, O is like Saavik, half Romulan, half Vulcan. And she's been a mole in Starfleet, I guess, 50, 60 years, a long time. I don't know if O's heritage is common knowledge. I wouldn't think so, given the trouble that way back in the Drumhead that, what's his name, Tarsis, that poor crewman who was part Romulan and lied about it on his application and was in trouble for that. I'm not sure where that information came from, if Agnes, Raffi's the one that mentioned it. And I guess we could believe her. She's used to be an intelligence operative. She solves mysteries and figures out data and all that kind of thing. So I guess we could believe it. I'm not sure where that information came from. You would think that would be secret, but okay. And there was the idea that this long dead civilization that was destroyed, or mostly destroyed, by synthetic life pulled these 8 stars together to create one system with a single planet in the middle, the planet of grief. I forget the name. A short little name started with A. They called it the planet of grief, to set up a warning. And that takes some serious technical know-how to pull 8 stars together and make them form a system. I think if you can do that, you're not all that destroyed. So, I mean, my first thought, I wrote it down, there's got to be easier ways to set up a warning system. But, okay, it's also a really cool sci-fi idea, so I get the appeal there. I'm not, it's not a big problem. I don't hate it. It struck me as a little bit out there, but that's okay. Picard has a conversation with Rios. This episode has a lot of Picard having one-on-one conversations with people, in which they talk about Captain Vandermeer and how Starfleet betrayed itself, fell short of its ideals, but they could still choose to do better, to go back to those ideals. I felt a little bit like that was maybe a little kind of a thesis statement or mission statement for the show itself. There's been lots of complaints that it's too dark, that it shows the Federation or Starfleet in a less than flattering light, and some people object to that. I don't want to say other people are wrong or shouldn't have certain objections. People like what they like, they feel what they feel about things, and it's not my place to say that they shouldn't. But I've never really gotten into that argument. I don't think the Federation should be perfect, and historically it hasn't been. There's the original series and Next Generation talked a lot about how Federation was, how wonderful it was. In many ways, it is wonderful. That's true, but clearly there were still problems. There were shady admirals and government conspiracies, and then in DS9, I don't want to say fully deconstructed the Federation, but they showed the Federation's flaws, show that maybe they're not as perfect as they think. So this isn't new. And I sometimes wonder if people who object to this are kind of looking back on Star Trek as more of a through rose-colored glasses, so to speak, more through nostalgia than what it really was. But I guess that's not really for me to say. But anyway, I don't think the Federation has ever been perfect. I don't think it's possible for it to be perfect. The point is to continue to try to be better, always trying to improve. I think that's the optimistic future. So, and I think Picard seems to agree with this, and this is what he seems to be saying, what the show seems to be saying through him. That even when we fall short, we could still always choose to do better, to try harder. I think that's very, very Star Trek. And Rios brings up a good point, because Soji briefly hijacked the ship until Rios was able to override with a Spanish lullaby, which is a really great thing. I really like that scene. And where she finally asked him, where Picard suggested doing it Soji's way, giving up that little bit of control, and Soji asked Rios to take her home, and Rios agreed. I thought that all worked really well. That was really good. Anyway, Rios points out that Soji was able to hijack his ship in 5 seconds, and that whole planet of synthetic life could be dangerous. He's not saying they're evil or they shouldn't exist, just that they're dangerous. That's true, but that's not unique to them. Data hijacked the Enterprise a few times, at least once in Data lore, and then a few other times, I think. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of past episodes, so I'll leave that to others. But definitely, they're dangerous. Soji takes them to the Borg transport network to get them to this, and that's how the episode ends. They go through this network to get to the planet with the 2 red moons where Bruce Maddox went and finally succeeded and created his android race. So I'm not sure why he was in debt to Vijayzal, but let that go. And we see Narek, I assume it's Narek, some little cloaked Romulan ship follow them through, which confused me, because I thought after Agnes injected herself with whatever that was that counteracted the tracking isotope in her blood, that they lost Narek. And I'm not sure how he found them again. I don't know if this is a plot hole or if this will be explained in the next episode. We'll have to wait and see. I hope it is explained, because that confused me. And also, I don't like Narek. I'm not looking forward to seeing more of him, even though I understand why it's necessary. For one thing, Soji has to confront him. Anyway. Let's see if I got any more notes. I literally wrote, stupid Narek. I think that's it. So, I have my issues, but I think overall this episode is really strong and it really worked. I would say I liked it, despite the little critiques I have. I think it really works. I think the acting on this show is just excellent across the board. Even those who I might call the weakest actors are not bad. They're just not quite on the same level. So that's a positive. I haven't really talked much about the look of the show, the cinematography, because I don't really know a lot about that. I'll say that the show looks really, really good. I think it's visually it's beautiful, so I really like that. And despite my problems, I'm excited, still excited, eager to see what happens next. We have 2 more episodes. I think it's a 2-parter finale. So I'm really excited to see how this all comes together. We have the La Sirena going through their transport network on the way to the synth planet. What do you want to bet that it ends up being called? It doesn't have a name. What do you want to bet it ends up being called? Ardani. That's something I think, did I mention about Nepenthe? Go all over the place here. That scene at the table when Kestra, who is awesome, figures out the coordinates of this planet from her disreputable pal, Captain Crandall, and tells Soji, you have a homeworld. And Soji says, my Ardani. And the look that Riker and Troy exchange, there was so much in that. Just a million feelings. I'm being a bad critic here because I can't really articulate what it was about that was so beautiful, but it just worked. I read online that Jonathan Frakes was very nervous about stepping into the role because he hasn't acted in years and hasn't acted as Riker even longer. He's been directing all this time, and he was really nervous, but he did a fantastic job. He and Marina Sirtis both were just amazing. So anyway, back to this episode. I hope that planet ends up being called Ardani, because that would be lovely. And so we got La Sirena on the way, Narek following secretly. We got the Borg cube with 7 on it, still on it. Nelnor still on it, right? Doing something crazy. All those jettisoned drones may or may not be out of commission. So surely that's going to have a role to play. Rizzo was attacked by drones. At first I thought she was killed, but I think I saw a flicker as they were piling on top of her. I saw a flicker of a transporter effect. So probably she's going to be back next week to plague us all. Nothing against the actress. The character bugs me. So, and then we have I don't know where this is all going. I'm excited to find out. So, and I've babbled on for a long time here, so until next week, hopefully I'll be able to do a more polished review as we get more settled into this house. But live long and prosper.